Coronation Street spoilers for next week, 3rd to 5th February. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on all the latest Coronation Street drama. Trust me, you're going to want to be in the loop for what's coming next week. Now get ready for a wild ride because lives are literally on the line. The Platt house goes up in flames and it's chaos as David and Abby both find themselves under suspicion. But that's not all. Rob's plans completely go off the rails and things are about to get even crazier. Mark your calendars because the spoilers for Coronation Street from February 3rd to 5th are going to leave you speechless. Don't say I didn't warn you. So sit tight and let's break it all down. Remember, if you want more insider spoilers like this, hit subscribe. Things are about to get intense.
1. David has a plan. After catching up with his old prison mate, David has got his hands full with a plan to sort out the mess he's gotten himself into. Remember, David's been feeling the heat from the local gangster, and with a debt hanging over him, he's been scrambling for a way out. Last week, he revealed to Shona and Max that he'd used the stolen cash to buy number 8 from his mum, Gail, and he's now planning to sell it to pay off what he owes. But things aren't as simple as they seem. The house is stuck in a long process, and there's no way of knowing when it'll be sold, leaving David in a tight spot. The pressure's mounting as the threats against David and his family keep piling up. He needs the money quickly, and every second counts. So, in a moment of desperation, he casually mentions to Shona and Max that burning the house down for the insurance payout might be the only way to get the cash fast. But when you mix a bloke like David with the kind of dangerous company he's been keeping, that's when things start to get messy. In comes Andy, his old mate from prison, who's been involved in dodgy dealings before, particularly insurance fraud. And this time, it looks like David might be ready to follow through on his offhand comment. By the time Monday rolls around, David's seriously contemplating the idea. He rings Andy up to make final arrangements for that very evening, fully aware of the risks he's taking. But then, just as he's about to dive headfirst into his plan, Nick, his brother, interrupts with a reminder. It's Sarah's birthday party. Unbeknownst to David, this little detail could complicate things even further. While David's plotting away, he's unaware that Harvey's man, Logan, has been eavesdropping on their conversation, picking up everything he needs to know. And you can bet that Logan isn't going to keep quiet about it. With the family's focus shifted towards Sarah's celebration, there's a creeping sense of unease. The Platts have been keeping a low profile at number 8, worried that their enemies might catch on to their whereabouts. Sarah, in particular, is starting to stress out. She's convinced that having the whole family gathered in one spot, especially at a time like this, is a recipe for disaster. But what Sarah doesn't know is that while she's fretting about the party, there's much bigger trouble brewing just under the surface. David, of course, isn't all that keen on being the centre of attention at a family gathering. He's got his own plans, and they don't exactly include celebrating Sarah's birthday. He tries to cover his tracks by telling Sarah that he's going to miss the party, claiming he's off to do a haircut at a client's house. But come on, anyone with a bit of sense knows that David's not exactly the type to let a little thing like family stop him from getting what he wants. So the question remains, what's he really up to? The stakes are higher than ever, and David's actions might just be the thing that triggers a chain of events none of them can control. While Sarah's busy worrying about her birthday, David's plotting something much darker. And with Logan lurking in the shadows, ready to spill the beans, it's clear that the Platts' lives are about to get a whole lot more complicated. What started as a simple money problem is quickly spiralling into something much more dangerous. Next week's drama is sure to take us on a wild ride, with secrets, lies, and betrayal lurking around every corner. You won't want to miss a minute of it as the Platts' world starts to unravel, and David's plan takes a dark turn. Trust me, the fallout from this one is going to be massive. Make sure you stay tuned for all the twists and turns heading your way in the next few episodes. 2. Abby attacks. Toya. Abby is in a constant state of fear, and this week it seems like that fear is only going to get worse. After a terrifying panic attack, she accidentally left her young son Alfie in her car at the precinct. While Abby was dealing with her own mental state, it was Toya who found Alfie wandering around on his own. Although Toya returned him to Abby, the damage was already done. The incident led to a visit from social services, which is Abby's worst nightmare. The thought of her children being taken away from her is something that haunts her every day. To make matters worse, Abby can't shake the feeling that someone ratted her out to social services. She is convinced that her sister-in-law Debbie was the one who reported her. Debbie had shown up at the scene not long after Abby returned to the precinct, which only fueled Abby's suspicions. The thought of anyone interfering with her ability to care for her son triggers something deep inside her, and it's clear that she's struggling to keep it together. For Abby, every moment of uncertainty feels like the floor is being pulled out from underneath her. It's like she's always one step away from losing everything she cares about, especially her children. She's already lived through the nightmare of having her kids taken from her in the past, and she's terrified it could happen again. Sally, who plays Abby, explains that Abby is constantly in autopilot mode, just trying to get through the day. She's trapped in a cycle of fear and pain, and it's becoming harder to escape. Things take a turn next week when Sam suggests to Abby that she bring Alfie along to Sarah's birthday party. After the ordeal with Alfie being left in the car, Abby suddenly has a realization. It wasn't Debbie who reported her. It must have been Toya. While Toya has been trying to help Abby through the trauma she's dealing with, Abby has rejected any advice from her. She's not ready to accept that help, especially when it feels like it's coming from someone she's increasingly suspicious of. The tension between Abby and Toya has been building for a while, and this realization only adds fuel to the fire. Abby has been battling PTSD ever since the death of her son Mason, and the emotional toll it's taken on her is immense. In her mind, the one thing that matters most is protecting Alfie. No one, not even Toya, is going to come between her and her son. Abby's mindset has become all-consuming, and she's willing to do whatever it takes to make sure Alfie stays with her. Later in the week, things escalate further when Abby finds Harry watching Hope's latest livestream. Hope, along with a few other kids, had been taking part in a séance at number 8. When Harry points out that Toya had caught the kids and ordered them out of the house, Abby's suspicions about Toya's intentions only grow stronger. She believes Toya is out to sabotage her and her relationship with Alfie, and she's not going to let that happen. In a fit of rage, Abby decides to confront Toya. She storms into the house and finds Toya clearing up after the séance. The tension between them is palpable. Abby accuses Toya of being jealous because she has a child of her own, something Toya hasn't been able to have. But the confrontation takes a dangerous turn when Toya accidentally knocks a bottle of red wine off the kitchen counter. The sight of the red liquid spreading across the floor is enough to trigger Abby's PTSD. As the blood-red liquid pools on the floor, Abby's mind starts to spiral. She sees visions of Mason and her late son Seb, both of them covered in blood. The flashbacks are overwhelming, and Abby is transported back to the darkest moments of her life. She's no longer in control of her actions. She's caught in a fight-or-flight response, and all she can think about is stopping whatever is threatening her. Toya, sensing that Abby is in a panic, tries to calm her down. But in that moment of chaos, Abby isn't thinking clearly. She pushes Toya away, and in the struggle, Toya falls, hitting her head on the floor. Abby didn't mean to hurt Toya, but in her state of distress, she's acting on pure instinct. She's not trying to kill her. She's trying to stop the situation from getting worse. The consequences of Abby's actions are severe, and they will have lasting effects on everyone involved. Abby may have gone to confront Toya with the intention of having a conversation, but things quickly spiral out of control. As Sally explains, Abby isn't backing down from this fight. She's determined to protect her son, and in her mind, this is a battle she can't afford to lose. In the heat of the moment, she makes a devastating choice, and now she's left to deal with the fallout. Abby's life has been filled with tragedy and loss, and it seems like she's constantly on the edge of breaking down. Her trauma from the past is eating away at her, and she's struggling to find a way to keep it all together. She feels like she has no one to turn to, and her desperate need to protect Alfie is pushing her to the brink. Her actions, while driven by fear, are bound to have far-reaching consequences. Next week's episodes promise to deliver some truly intense drama, as Abby's mental state continues to unravel. She's caught in a spiral of fear, anger, and heartbreak, and it's unclear how much longer she can hold it all together. With Toya now injured and the tension between them at an all-time high, things are only going to get messier. Abby may have crossed a line, but what comes next could change everything for her and her family. The road ahead for Abby is going to be full of difficult choices, and she's already made one that could haunt her for a long time. As the drama unfolds, viewers will be on the edge of their seats, wondering just how far Abby will go to protect the ones she loves. The aftermath of this confrontation is only just beginning, and it's sure to leave a lasting impact on everyone involved. 3. The Platt House goes up in flames. After the chaos of the confrontation, things quickly take a darker turn. As Toya lies unconscious in the kitchen, unaware of what's unfolding outside, someone with ill intent sneaks up to number 8. They push a lit rag through the letterbox, setting the house on fire. The flames quickly spread, and what seemed like an ordinary day turns into a dangerous nightmare for the entire family. With the fire starting to rage, there's no time to waste. Everything is about to change in the worst possible way. Down the street, Sally catches the scent of smoke and, realizing something's terribly wrong, rushes to the party at the bistro to raise the alarm. She's frantic, urging everyone to stay calm while trying to figure out what's going on. As she reaches the scene and sees the house engulfed in flames, panic sets in. It hits her that Lily had been inside, taking part in a live stream. That moment of realization only adds to the horror, and there's no time to waste. Nick, Shona, and Max race to the back door, desperate to get inside and save whoever they can. Nick is the first to make it into the house, and what he finds is nothing short of terrifying. Toya is unconscious on the kitchen floor, and it's clear that the fire is only growing stronger. Meanwhile, Max and Shona are battling their way through thick smoke, doing everything they can to find Lily. The heat and chaos make it almost impossible to navigate, but somehow Shona manages to locate Lily and get her to safety. Max, however, is still inside, trapped by the blaze. David arrives just as the situation is spiraling out of control. Shona informs him that Max is still in the house, and before they can even get close, the unthinkable happens. The house explodes in a massive ball of flames, sending shockwaves down the street. It's a moment of pure horror as the entire family stands there helpless, not knowing whether Max is alive or dead. The fire department quickly arrives, and the emergency services work tirelessly to find anyone still inside. As the firefighters assess the situation, Kit points them towards Toya, who has suffered a nasty head injury from the fall, along with severe smoke inhalation. The scene is chaotic, and the family is in shock. When Leanne turns up at the scene, visibly drunk, she attempts to check on her sister, but Nick, furious and emotional, tells her to leave. His frustration is boiling over. This is no time for distractions. The focus is on saving lives, not dealing with anyone's personal dramas. Eventually, one of the firefighters retrieves Max, but his condition is grave. The sight of Max's seemingly lifeless body is enough to break David's heart, and he rushes to the ambulance with him. In the quiet that follows, Shona, still reeling from the chaos, pulls David aside. She remembers what he said earlier about the fire, and she starts to put the pieces together. Realizing where this is going, David reassures her that he had nothing to do with it, that he was with an old mate at the time. But the doubt lingers, and Shona can't shake the feeling that there's more to the story. At the hospital, the family waits anxiously for any news. Kit arrives to confirm their worst fears. The fire was definitely arson. David's mind races as he connects the dots, quickly pointing the finger at Logan, the one person who has been a constant threat. He's ready to take action, but the question remains: is David about to let his emotions get the better of him? With everything at stake, there's no telling how far he'll go to find answers. Back at the hospital, David is consumed with guilt. He blames himself for everything that's happened to Max, regretting the moment he took Harvey's money. If only he hadn't made that decision, none of this would have happened. The weight of the fire and its aftermath is almost too much to bear. But as tempers flare and emotions run high, one thing is clear: this tragedy is far from over. 4. Did Leanne start the fire? When Leanne shows up at the hospital, she's hoping for any news about Toya, but what she gets instead is a cold reception from Nick. He's furious, and he doesn't mince his words. He accuses Leanne of being the one who started the fire. Given the recent drama, it's not exactly a surprising accusation. Only a week ago, Leanne had caused chaos in Nick and Toya's life when her jealousy got the best of her. She'd gone so far as to put their passports in the toaster, all because she found out they were planning a holiday together. With everything happening now, it doesn't take much for Nick to draw a link between her past actions and the fire. Leanne is taken aback by the accusation and immediately denies having anything to do with the fire. But the doubt starts creeping in when she finds a box of matches in her coat pocket. She can't remember putting them there, but they've certainly got her questioning herself. Is it possible that in a drunken haze, she might have done something without realizing it? She's rattled, and it's clear that her own mind is turning on her. Things don't get any better when Leanne later claims she was at Oliver's grave when the fire started. Steve, noticing the inconsistency, quickly clocks that she's not being truthful. It's one of those moments where Leanne's guilt starts to surface. She admits to Steve that she doesn't actually remember where she was during the time the fire was set. She's being honest about not being able to recall much because she was completely drunk. It's a sobering realization for Leanne, and it hits her that her actions, whether intentional or not, could have consequences she's not ready to face. Leanne tries to piece together what happened, but all she can remember is seeing Toya entering number 8. After that, it's all a blur. She later woke up in Victoria Gardens, with a box of matches in her hand, but how she got there remains a mystery. Her memory of the events is fragmented at best, leaving her even more anxious and unsure of what really took place. The questions keep swirling, and she can't shake the feeling that she might be responsible, even if she doesn't want to admit it. Steve, trying to help Leanne come to terms with the situation, advises her to speak to the police. It's the sensible thing to do, but Leanne's already on edge and not sure she's ready for the fallout. Will she take Steve's advice, or will her fear and confusion keep her from facing the truth? With so much at stake, the choice she makes could have a lasting impact, and time is quickly running out. 5. Abby disappears. Kevin and Debbie are growing increasingly concerned about Abby. Since the fire, there's been no sign of her, and neither of them can shake the feeling that something's off. Debbie, in particular, can't help but voice her suspicions. Given everything that's been going on with Abby, her disappearance after the fire raises all sorts of questions. They're both left wondering if Abby might have something to do with the disaster, but they're just not sure how to approach it. Abby, meanwhile, is trying to keep a low profile. She sneaks back to number 13 to gather a few of her belongings, trying to stay out of sight. The last thing she wants is to run into Kevin or Debbie, especially with everything that's happened. When she hears them returning, she quickly makes her exit through the back door, trying to avoid any confrontation. But her actions are only adding to the growing concern that she's hiding something, and Kevin and Debbie are becoming more anxious by the minute. Later that evening, Kevin gets an unexpected call from Wendy, the childminder. She tells him that Abby came to pick up Alfie over an hour ago, but something about the way she acted didn't sit right. She seemed on edge, far more than usual. This worries Kevin even more. With Abby still nowhere to be found, his mind begins to race. Could she be in trouble? Or worse, could she be involved in something far more serious than anyone realised? Abby's mental state is clearly fragile, and, as Sally explains, her PTSD is making things even more complicated. After seeing the fire, Abby is in a state of confusion. She can't remember exactly what happened, but she knows deep down that she was there, and she feels responsible. The anger she felt at the time, combined with the conflict, has left her in a fog. In her mind, she's piecing things together, but the conclusion she's come to might not be the full truth. She's convinced that the fire might have been her doing, even though she doesn't fully understand how or why it started. Kevin's worry escalates when he realises that one of the jerry cans from the garage is missing. His suspicions lead him to check the CCTV footage from the day before the fire. What he sees shocks him. A hooded figure is seen rummaging around the garage, but it's unclear who it is. Kevin can't help but wonder if it was Abby, but there's no way to know for sure. With everything falling apart and the mystery deepening, Kevin's fear for Abby's well-being and his own safety continues to grow. 6. David is arrested. When Andy turns up at the salon asking for David, Sarah offers to take a message, but Andy refuses. Instead, he gives Todd a knowing look before heading off. Sarah, puzzled by the exchange, presses Todd for answers, and he eventually opens up. He tells her that he met Andy at a rave, which was held to celebrate Paul's life. It turns out that Andy is not just a random acquaintance. He's an old prison mate of both Paul and David. Todd adds that Andy served time for insurance fraud, and as soon as Sarah hears that, the alarm bells go off in her head. She quickly makes a call to Nick, warning him about the connection between Andy and David. Sarah's concern grows, and she's determined to get to the bottom of things. Later, when she and Nick find David at the cafe, they don't waste any time confronting him. They're both furious, and they can't shake the feeling that David's involved in something shady, possibly even the fire. They're convinced that he must have dragged Andy into it, considering Andy's criminal background. The tension is palpable, and David's caught off guard by the accusations. But the big question remains: will David come clean about what he was really up to, or will he continue to hide the truth? As the pressure mounts, David eventually finds himself sitting in an interview room at the police station, facing questioning from Kit. David is insistent on his innocence, claiming that he was miles away in Denton with Andy when the fire broke out. He believes that this alibi will clear him, but there's a major problem. When Kit returns with news from Andy, it's not what David expected. Andy has denied ever seeing David, and this leaves David in a very dangerous position. The situation takes a turn for the worse when Kit delivers the bombshell. Since Andy didn't back up David's alibi, they have no choice but to arrest him. David's world is quickly falling apart, and it's clear that the walls are closing in around him. He protests his innocence, but without Andy's corroboration, it's hard for anyone to believe him. The more David tries to explain, the more suspicious everyone becomes. With the arrest looming, David is left to wonder how things have escalated so quickly. His association with Andy and his involvement in the events surrounding the fire are now under intense scrutiny. It's clear that someone is going to have to take the fall for what happened, and right now David is at the top of the list. But as the police tighten their grip, David knows that the truth is slipping further away from him. This twist leaves everyone questioning David's motives, and with the arrest now on the table, it's uncertain where this will all lead. Was David really involved in the fire, or is he just caught up in a situation that's spiraling out of control? With his alibi in tatters and his actions being put under the microscope, the coming days are going to be crucial in determining whether David can clear his name or whether he's destined to pay the price for a crime he may not have committed. 7. Steve feels guilty over letting Amy down. Tracy is growing more and more anxious as the hours pass, unable to get in touch with Amy. Her daughter had gone to a party the night before in Wilmslow, but something's not sitting right with Tracy. Amy had been uneasy about running into Eric, the father of her rapist, Aaron, at the party. Things took a turn when Eric, along with a group of lads wearing t-shirts emblazoned with Aaron's face, revealed they were there to celebrate Aaron's stag do. The whole situation rattled Amy, and she didn't stick around to face the uncomfortable reality of it all. She tried to reach out to Steve for support, but he was distracted and completely unaware of what was going on. While Tracy worries about Amy's whereabouts, Steve's not overly concerned. He assumes Amy's just crashed at a friend's house after the party. He hasn't heard from her, but that's not unusual for him. He's too caught up in his own world, enjoying a passionate moment with Leanne, to notice the worry building at home. He's not thinking about Amy's safety, and instead he brushes off Tracy's concerns, figuring it's nothing serious. But when Amy finally returns home, her explanation doesn't quite add up. She tells her parents that her phone died and she'd been trying to get in touch with Steve all night. She also claims she lost her car keys and ended up spending the entire night walking back home. It's a plausible story, but Tracy can't help but feel something's off. The details don't seem to fully explain her daughter's distress, and Tracy's suspicions start to mount. On the other hand, Steve is feeling guilty about the situation and tries to cover his tracks. He claims he had an early night, trying to explain his unavailability the night before. But it's clear that Steve's version of events doesn't quite match up with the reality of the situation. His attempt to cover up his actions with Leanne leaves him in a more difficult spot, especially with Tracy and Amy both asking questions. As time goes on, the tension between Tracy and Steve grows. Amy's absence, coupled with the strange circumstances, is putting a strain on their relationship. Tracy begins to wonder if there's more to Steve's story than he's letting on. Could the truth about what Steve was really up to come to light? Only time will tell, but the cracks in their story are starting to show, and it seems like it might be hard to keep everything hidden for much longer. 8. Rob's plans go awry. Next week, the tension surrounding Carla's kidney transplant plans reaches a boiling point as things start to fall into place. Carla's brother, Rob, has offered to donate one of his kidneys, but there's a catch. His motives aren't as clear-cut as they seem, and Carla's wary of his intentions. With Rob behind bars, Carla has no choice but to go private to avoid the hefty costs of keeping a prisoner in a hospital on the NHS. It's a tough pill to swallow, but Carla has no other options if she wants the transplant to happen sooner rather than later. Fortunately, Carla has a bit of financial help from an unexpected source. Betsy, her late mother's inheritance, has allowed her to secure half of the £100,000 required for the procedure. It's a huge relief for Carla, but she knows that the money and the transplant don't come without complications. As the tests begin, Carla's future is hanging in the balance. The question now is whether Rob's kidney will be a match for her. If it is, the next step is for Carla to pay a hefty deposit, which adds even more stress to the situation. Carla isn't taking any chances, and she heads to see Rob in prison to update him on the progress. When she breaks the news that the compatibility test can be done in the prison, Rob's reaction is far from what Carla expects. He's clearly disappointed, and it's obvious that he had something else in mind. Rob had assumed he'd be going to the hospital for the tests, and now he's left feeling sidelined. Carla's decision to handle everything from behind bars has left him frustrated, and it raises the question of what he had planned. There's something about Rob's reaction that doesn't sit right with Carla. She's never fully trusted him, and his disappointment only deepens her doubts. Why would he be so bothered by the tests happening in prison? It makes her wonder if his offer to donate was more about manipulation than a genuine desire to help. Carla is left questioning whether she's making the right choice by relying on Rob, especially with so much at stake. As Carla grapples with these uncertainties, the transplant plan moves forward, but there are still so many unanswered questions. Rob's motives are becoming clearer, but the damage may already be done. With the pressure mounting, Carla has to figure out how to navigate the complications of her brother's involvement without letting it derail her chance at a new life. The road ahead is full of twists and turns, and it's unclear whether Carla can trust those closest to her or if she'll have to go it alone.